Imagine a silence so deep it feels heavy. The temperature is 40 degrees below zero. Your eyelashes are frozen shut. You are standing in a dense forest in Finland, surrounded by thousands of ancient pine trees. And somewhere, in that endless white void, he is watching you. You don't see a muzzle flash. You don't hear a reload. You just hear a sharp crack, and your friend drops dead into the snow beside you. Panic sets in. You fire blindly into the trees, but you are fighting a ghost. This isn't a movie. This was the terrifying reality for the Soviet army in 1939. They were being hunted by a man who didn't use a scope, a man who packed snow into his mouth so his breath wouldn't reveal his position, a man who lay still for days, waiting for the perfect moment. They called him Deadliest Sniper, the White Death. His name was Simo Häyhä. He killed over 500 men in less than 100 days. But how does a simple, short farmer become the deadliest sniper in human history? Let's step into the snow. To understand the monster, we must first understand the cage he was born into. The year is 1939. World War II is just beginning to ignite. The Soviet Union, a massive superpower, decides to invade its tiny neighbor, Finland. On paper, this was a suicide mission for the Finns. The Soviets had the tanks, the planes, and over 500,000 soldiers. The Finns? They had courage, outdated weapons, and the freezing cold. The Soviets expected to crush Finland in a couple of weeks. They were so arrogant that they brought marching bands and dress uniforms, planning a victory parade in Helsinki before the snow even settled. But they made a fatal mistake. They attacked in the dead of winter. And they weren't just fighting the Finnish army, they were fighting the terrain itself. Among the defenders was a 33-year-old man named Simo Häyhä. He stood only 5 feet tall. He was mild-mannered, quiet, and a farmer by trade. He didn't look like a killer. But Simo had a gift. Before the war, his house was filled with trophies, not for killing men, but for local marksmanship competitions. He knew the forests like the back of his hand. When the Red Army crossed the border, Simo didn't panic. He grabbed his old rifle, waxed his skis, and disappeared into the white wilderness. What made Simo Häyhä the deadliest sniper wasn't modern technology. In fact, it was the exact opposite. While other snipers in 1939 were beginning to use advanced telescopic scopes, Simo refused. He used a standard Finnish M2830 rifle with simple iron sights. Why? Because a telescopic scope forces you to raise your head just an inch higher to see through it, and in a sniper duel, an inch is the difference between life and death. Furthermore, in the harsh Finnish winter, glass scopes would fog up, and the glint of sunlight reflecting off the lens could reveal your position to the enemy. Simo relied on his naked eye and pure instinct. His preparation was ritualistic and obsessive. He invented tactics that are still studied by military academies today. Before taking a position, Simo would pour water onto the snow in front of his barrel. This froze the snow into a hard sheet of ice. This ensured that when he fired, the muzzle blast wouldn't kick up a puff of fresh powdery snow and give away his location. But his most famous tactic was even more extreme. The temperature often dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. In that cold, every breath you exhale creates a thick cloud of steam. To a spotter, that steam is a target. So Simo would take handfuls of snow and stuff them into his mouth. He would keep the snow there for hours, cooling his mouth down, preventing his breath from turning into steam. He literally ate the cold to become invisible. Simo was deployed to the Kollaa River front. This was known as the Killer Hill. The Soviets were throwing wave after wave of soldiers into the area, and Simo was waiting. His daily routine was terrifyingly simple. He would wake up before dawn, eat a hearty breakfast to keep his body warm, and dress in layers of white wool. He put on his white camouflage hood, essentially a bedsheet with holes cut for eyes, and ski out to his position. He would lie in the snow for hours, motionless. He became a part of the landscape. When a Soviet column marched by, he didn't just fire randomly. He picked off the officers first, the leaders. This created chaos. Without orders, the Soviet conscripts panicked. On his best day, it is reported that Simo achieved 25 kills in a single day. The terrified Russian soldiers began to talk about a spirit in the woods. They couldn't see him. They couldn't hear him. They only found the bodies. But Simo wasn't just a sniper. When the Soviets got too close, he would switch to his Suomi submachine gun. He was just as deadly at close range as he was from a distance. The Soviets were losing hundreds of men to one single farmer. The Soviet commanders were furious. A single peasant was holding back a battalion. They decided to hunt the hunter. First, they sent their own counter-snipers. The best marksmen the Soviet Union had to offer were sent to Kollaa with one mission: kill the White Death. It became a deadly game of cat and mouse. Simo would see the glint of a scope in the distance, the mistake he never made, and he would take the shot. One by one, the Soviet snipers fell. Desperate, the Soviets changed tactics. If they couldn't hit him with a bullet, they would blow up the entire forest. They began indiscriminate artillery strikes on areas where they thought Simo might be hiding. Shells rained down, shattering trees and turning the white snow black with dirt and shrapnel. Shrapnel tore through Simo's coat, tearing his gear apart, but miraculously, he remained unharmed. He would simply move to a new position, pack his snow, check his iron sights, and wait. He seemed immortal. But luck, even for a legend, eventually runs out. It was March 6, 1940. The war was nearing its end. Simo was in a fierce firefight. The Soviets were pushing hard. Suddenly, a Soviet soldier spotted him. An explosive bullet fired from a distance struck Simo. It hit his lower jaw. It was a devastating wound. Soldiers who found him later said that half his face was missing. He was thrown into a pile of bodies, presumed dead. But then a leg twitched. His fellow soldiers realized he was still breathing. They rushed him to a field hospital. He was in a coma, hovering between life and death. The White Death had finally been struck. For 1 week, Simo lay unconscious. The war raged on for those final few days. And then something cinematic happened. On March 13, 1940, Simo Häyhä opened his eyes. It was the exact same day that peace was declared between Finland and the Soviet Union. He had fought until the very last moment of the war. Simo survived. He endured 26 surgeries to reconstruct his jaw. Although his face was permanently disfigured, his spirit remained unbroken. He returned to his farm. He went back to hunting moose and breeding dogs. He lived a long, quiet life, passing away in 2002 at the age of 96. When interviewers asked him later in life how he became such a good shooter, his answer was simple: practice. When asked if he regretted killing so many people, he said, "I only did what I was told to do, as well as I could." Simo Häyhä wasn't a superhero. He was a man who mastered his environment, mastered his weapon, and mastered his fear. In the freezing hell of the Winter War, he proved that one man can strike fear into the heart of an empire. He was the White Death, and the snow still remembers him.